I been painting wrong this whole time? This could change the whole trajectory of where I take my art. I don't know. And it's all because of what I learned reading this book by Elizabeth Kincaid, Dancing with Light. Her watercolors are beautiful. And the paint colors that she uses are the exact opposite of what I recommend all the time. So let's dive in and see what the heck is going on with this. And do I need to rethink my whole paint palette? Hi everyone, I'm Rachel Varner, and I hope you will subscribe if you want to learn not just the how but the why of watercolor so you move along your paint journey faster. And be sure to like this video. The way that I like to paint is with what are called non-staining paint colors. So there's non-staining watercolor paint and there's staining. So non-staining colors tend to be more granulating, more opaque, heavier. Like ultramarine blue is probably part of the backbone of the colors I paint with. It's mostly the ultramarine blue that is such a heavy non-staining granulating paint, and I love the beautiful granulating effects I get with this color, and I love the dark, rich colors I can get that are still fixable, which means when I paint something with ultramarine blue, and a lot of times I mix burnt sienna with it, and I let it dry, and I don't like what I see, I can lift it. Meaning I can get a scrubber. I use my stiff scrubber. I get my stiff scrubber wet and I scrub whatever I don't like or whatever I want to soften. It's so workable and forgiving if you are an artist who likes to put something down and then fix it. And a lot of artists work this way. I was recently watching another video by an artist who was very accomplished, and she said she worked that way. She puts something down, looks at it, and then decides if that's how she wants it to look, and then makes adjustments. So she said watercolor is just a series of making mistakes and fixing them. And also Paint Coach, who is an oil painter here on YouTube. He's amazing. He paints the same way. He says you put down a stroke, see how it affects the rest of the painting, and then make adjustments or fixes according to every next paint stroke you make. And that's how I work. And it's hard to work like that when you're working with paints that are staining, that are not fixable. So I like to work on paper that is scrubbable, like Arches cold press or bow hung paper. And you can scrub these non-staining paints. You can let them dry and then go in with a scrubber and lift them back up, erase them, if you will. And they're very forgiving, and it makes watercolor really easy to fix. And I like that. I make a lot of mistakes. I'm a mistake-prone person. That's just how I work. And so if you use staining paints, you can't do that. So why would you want to use staining paints? That's a question I ask all the time, and that question was recently answered in this book, Elizabeth Kincaid's book, Dance with Light. She talks about her favorite paint colors are mostly staining. I was like, what? She likes staining paint? That's crazy. Why does she like staining paint? Well, her style is a very transparent style. Oh, this is gorgeous. I mean, look at that. It's just will break your heart. Do you see how this looks? It looks like it's glowing from within, like it's painted with glass almost. And this is what watercolor is kind of famous for. There's even the Transparent Watercolor Society that focuses their exhibitions on a competition of transparent watercolor. And it's because it's just such a beautiful, ethereal looking style of painting. And one of the tricks to this style of painting, apparently, is using staining paint. Yeah, darn it. I hate painting with staining paint. So that is what is so powerful, apparently, about painting with more staining paints in your palette, because these colors are super saturated, and when you put them on the paper, they're just so powerful, and it doesn't take a lot of glazes and layering, and they're very transparent looking, as if the painting was glowing from within when you paint with these colors. And it's a whole different approach to painting than what I use. And so it's worth exploring. And I might just do that. I might whip out my old crusty phthalo paint tube and look at some of the other colors in her paint palette. Let's see what her other colors are. I mean, you look through this book and he just keeps saying, wow. Okay, she used ultramarine blue in this. All right, here's some of her colors. She does use ultramarine blue. Ultramarine blue, phthalo blue, Indian yellow, Indian throne blue, Indian yellow, quinacridone. The quinacridones are very powerful reds that are, I do believe they're really staining. Windsor red, very staining reds. I prefer M-gram naphthol red, which also is a beautiful transparent color, but it doesn't stain as badly as these other reds. Windsor red, Windsor violet's pretty staining. I do like Windsor violet, but it is strong. So that is something to think about. Trying to paint with more staining paints, or at least giving it a go and seeing how I like it and seeing if it affects my work is something that I might try. So postscript, about a week after I recorded this video, I decided to give a looser, less heavy, more transparent approach a go. But was the key to a more transparent approach choosing less granulating, more staining paint? Well, for this butterfly, I did actually use a heavy granulating paint, and that was my lamp black. But it was painted on mostly as a final detail. It was not the backbone color of this painting. I would say that the backbone color of this painting was my Holbein Aureolin, a very transparent but still non-staining paint. So then what was the key to this transparent look I was able to achieve? Two things. One was painting in a different style, a more a la prima style than what I typically do, which means painting mostly in one sitting, all in one go, painting mostly wet and wet, which causes things to blend dreamily and have a fresh look. To paint in this style, though, you must embrace the very wise Japanese concept of wabi-sabi, a worldview that accepts imperfection and the ephemeral nature of life. So this style is freeing in that you allow the mistakes to stay in the work, resulting in a fresher style. The other key to this new transparent approach was the paper I chose. This was painted on a hot press, which does not blend as smoothly, so it shows off your brush strokes or exposes them, which is why this can be a hard paper for beginners to work with. But it also makes your work look fresher if you paint in a bold way, mistakes be damned. Also, colors sit more on top of this paper, so the colors appear brighter too, and edges are crisper on this smoother surface. Is this the only way to achieve transparency like Elizabeth Kincaid does? No, and in fact, the way Elizabeth Kincaid works is not a la prima at all, but a very planned out style using optical mixing of colors. What is optical mixing? To mix colors optically, you glaze one color over the other, kind of like layering different colors of saran wrap over each other to create new colors. So when Elizabeth Kincaid paints a green area, she first paints yellow, and then she lets that layer dry. Then she'll paint a thin glaze of blue over that. This approach creates very clean, transparent color. She rarely mixes paint on her palette. Rather, she'll have a large palette for red, another for yellow, etc., and uses glazes to optically mix her colors versus mixing them on her palette. So again, the wonders of watercolor continue to unfurl. There are many, many ways to paint a watercolor. You can use heavier granulating paint for a style that looks like an oil painting almost on cold press paper. You can paint via optical mixing with clean color. You can paint a la prima in a splashy style and get so many different effects. So I would encourage you to try a lot of different styles and approaches to see what works best for you. So I hope that gives you some food for thought, and leave me a comment what you think about this. What do you like painting with? Do you like painting with staining or non-staining, or you're undecided because it's too early in your watercolor journey? You might not know yet, but after painting 20 years, I'm pretty stuck on my non-staining paints, and I have good reason to be, because I get the effects that I'm looking for in my work, but I would love more transparency in my work. So maybe it's time to try that here and there and see if I like painting in that style. I don't know. What do y'all think? Anyway, thank you so much for joining me in this tutorial. Be sure to check out my Facebook group and come post your paintings. And if you ask for critiques, we always give so much helpful advice, including to me and from me. I try to comment on every painting anyone posts in my group. So if you want to have my thoughts on your painting, post in my group. And as part of my Patreon, I do offer critiques. If you join my Patreon, I offer full critiques if you join for a year. So that's another thing to think about if you are interested in having me critique your work more deeply. I do that if you join my Patreon for a year. And if you would like to try my Patreon tutorials without committing, you can join at the $8 level for a week for free. And you can also try my free start to finish Patreon style tutorial at rachelstudio.com beginner bunny. So that is a way that you can kind of try me out before you commit. And if you like to paint dreamy, lots of animals, dreamy in a kind of dreamy style, I'm always trying to get dreamier. And mostly animals, but I am trying to branch out too to have more variety in my ever-growing library of over 100 tutorials now. And if you join for a year, you do get 2 months free. So you get 10 months you pay for and 2 months free. So it's a great deal. I'd love to see you there. And be sure to subscribe if you enjoy my content. Don't forget to like this video. It helps me so much. The way you can help me the most is to go binge the rest of my content. I do have some wonderful playlists. I'll link one here that are my most popular videos. And I will see you next time. Now go watercolor your world. Bye, everybody.